All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to look at 5OA3, which is being able to use two given rules in order to create two number patterns. All right. As you can see on the screen, I have posted two different pictures of function tables, and it gives certain directions, certain rules regarding the function tables. Now, if you notice the picture on the right, the function, of course, would be the rule. And within that, there are things called an input as well as an output. And input and outputs are also mostly recorded as X as well as Y. And we've discussed this, especially a few weeks ago, if you remember, X coordinates, Y coordinates, ordered pair. So we're going to use what we already know regarding that. And now we're going to look at completing a chart, finding X, finding Y, reading rules in order to find X coordinates as well as Y coordinates, and eventually by the end of this week, being able to graph everything what we know, and also finding a pattern as to what is going on within the particular graph. So let's get started. Again, I'm going to work through this, and I want you to just pay as much attention. Feel free to pause at any given time so you can write down any notes, okay? So here first we see a problem. Now, I'm going to read the problem as I would want you to approach any sort of problem. Break it down so you can understand it better, okay? So first time through, it says Antonia and Connor are playing, not planning. Antonia and Connor are playing a patterns game. Each draws a card and finds the first 5 numbers in the pattern. Then they try to find a relationship between the corresponding numbers in both patterns. All right, again, a lot of words, so let's break it down so we have a better understanding for it, okay? It says that they are playing a game. Each, of course, draws a card and finds the first 5 numbers in the pattern. Then they try to find a relationship between the corresponding numbers in both patterns, okay? All right. So they're finding the first 5 numbers, okay? They're finding a relationship between both patterns. Now, what is a relationship, of course, okay? Now, without getting any sort of mushy, whatever weird things, okay? It's basically having a bond, having some sort of connection of which things are alike. So, for example, if you have a friendship, which is a type of relationship, if you have a friendship with someone, you find certain things that you have in common with them, right? So that's what we want to find. What is the commonality that we can see? What is the relationship between these two particular rules, and what is the pattern based upon that? And that, of course, links with our ICAM statement. All right, so right here, we notice that there, I'm going to use a different color. We have Antonia's card, and we also have Connor's card, okay? Both of which state a particular rule. And then, of course, for A, it says complete the table. All right, we have Antonia's numbers, we have Connor's numbers. So the first one, Antonia's card, it says start at 2, multiply by 2. All right, so if we see right here, there's a 2. So now the rule is saying multiply by 2. So 2 times 2 will give us 4. And if we continue with this pattern now and must continue going, we're not going to start at 2 all over because we already did that. It says start at 2, multiply by 2. Now we're going to go from 4 and follow the rule. Multiply by 2. 4 times 2 will give us 8. We continue going forward. 8 times 2 gives us 16. 16 times 2 gives us 32. So there we have completed a pattern. We see, based on the rule, we have completed the first 5 numbers for Antonia. Now let's look at Connor's numbers. The rule says start at 1, then add half, then multiply by 2. So we see multiple rules right here. So again, let's start at 1. Add half. Another way of looking at half, as we discussed in class, is 0.5. We've seen 0.5, decimal 0.5, or 5/10, or some stated equivalent fractions, 6/12, right? Those are equivalent fractions. They're equal to half as well. But another way of representing half could be 0.5. So we could say if we add 0.5 or we add half to the 1, we could say we would get 1.5 or 1.5. Okay, that's just the first part. Done. We added half to our number. The next part says then multiply by 2. Now, for some, multiplication may be a little bit difficult, but think of repeated addition. Okay, if we had 1.5 and we added that 2 times, that's the same thing as saying 1.5 times 2. Okay, so let's say, and I'm just going to write it up here. Let's say we have 1.5 plus 1.5. Let's just take it based on repeated addition. If I look at this and I say, okay, here I have 2 halves. So what does that equal? Well, if anything, if I take a half and I add another half to it, I'm going to have 1 whole. So if I now have 1 whole here, another whole here, and this 1 whole, right? That's going to equal now 3. So what does that mean in conclusion? That means 1.5 plus 1.5 equals 3. Again, another way of saying that, 1.5 times 2 equals 3. So let's continue with that rule. Now, since we start at 1, we added a half, and then multiplied that by 2, and we got 3. Let's now continue with 3, add a half, multiply by 2. So 3 plus half is 3.5, right? 3.5. We're going to multiply that times 2. Another way of saying that is 3.5 plus 3.5. Well, that's going to give us 7. 3 plus 3 is 6. 2 halves equal 1 whole, so 6 plus 1 equals 7. And then continue the same rule, right? Add a half to the 7, we get 7.5. Multiply that times 2. 7.5 times 2 is 15. Another way of saying that is 7.5 plus 7.5. 7 plus 7 is 14, plus 2 halves, which is 1 whole. We get 15, right? And then we continue the rule. So we have 15.5. We're going to add half to that. Multiply that times 2. We get 31, okay? So I'm going to erase this so we can have a little bit clearer understanding, okay? So based on our rules, rather, not one rule, based on our rules, we have just found the first 5 numbers, and that's what it's asking us to do, find the first 5 numbers, and find, of course, a relationship between these two, which we're going to do next. We followed the rules based upon Antonia's card and Connor's card. Antonia's was start at 2 and then multiply by 2. We then found 4, 8, 16, 32. We found the next numbers, and we have a total now of 5 numbers. For Connor, start at 1, add a half, then multiply that by 2. So we started at 1, added a half to that, we got 1.5, multiply that times 2, we got 3. If we continue that same pattern, we get 3, 7, 15, 31. Okay? And if you notice here on the next page, I also have the same chart right here. Okay? Same chart. So we're going to use this now and answer B and C. So B says, write the first 5 ordered pairs with the X coordinate representing the numbers in Antonia's pattern and the Y coordinate representing the corresponding numbers in Connor's pattern. All right, again, let's break this down. It's the first 5 ordered pairs. Now, with that being said, I'm going to put this over here. Remember, an ordered pair, ladies and gentlemen, if you recall the notes that Mr. O'Neill gave you, the definitions, an ordered pair is X, comma, Y. Okay, that's what it should look like. Sorry about that. All right, so that's what an ordered pair should look like. Next, the X coordinate is going to represent Antonia. Okay, cool. Let's do this. The Y coordinate is going to represent Connor. Okay, so now we have an idea. Then it says we need the first 5 ordered pairs. So let's use this chart now. X represented as Antonia, Y representing Connor. So I'm going to even label this. I should see everybody, every time you see a chart, label it so you can understand it better, okay? X represents Antonia, Y represents Connor. Okay, first ordered pair, X, Y. So that means we're going to have 2, comma 1. How did I get that? Well, Antonia's number is X. Connor's number is Y. So that's the first slot here. The next slot, 4, 3. Next, 8, 7. And you're probably starting to see the order pair, which now we should be able to then tell the next one is 16, 15. And finally, 32, 31. So, ladies and gentlemen, right here we have our first 5 ordered pair numbers. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we know we have answered our first portion. Okay? C, does there appear to be a relationship between Antonia's numbers and Connor's numbers? If so, describe the relationship. Well, what does that mean? Do you notice anything that they may have in common? You might say, okay, well, I know Antonia's numbers are going by 2, so they're being doubled. Connor's numbers, we added 1, and then we multiply that by 2. You are absolutely right. That's the rule that we followed. However, what's a relationship? What can you tell that they may have in common besides that, just looking at the chart? And some may have, during class, we mentioned that they do. There is a relationship that's happening. And what is that relationship? If you look at these numbers carefully, Antonia's numbers, right, as you just read down, they are 1 more than Connor's numbers. Another way of saying that is Connor's numbers are 1 less than Antonia's numbers. That's a relationship they have in common. So if we were to continue with this pattern and follow the rule, let's say we just wanted to come up with Antonia's numbers. We can easily find Connor's numbers based upon knowing that they're 1 apart from each other. Okay? So I'm just writing that. They are 1 number apart from, again, forgive the board, each other. Or forgive me with writing on the board. And what does it mean by they? I mean Antonia and Connor. Okay, they are 1 number away. So if Mr. O'Neill wanted to ask you a question, which you very well could see on a test, let's say the position is number 7. Would you be able to figure out Antonia's numbers and Connor's numbers if we wanted you to find, let me erase this so you can see, if we wanted to find out 6 and 7? Your answer should be yes. We should be able to figure this out because 1, we know the rule, right? And we, of course, know that Connor's numbers are 1 less than Antonia's because that's the relationship they have. So if we follow the rule for just Antonia, we can find Connor's, okay? All right, so that was, of course, today's lesson, what we talked about. We're going to dive a little bit deeper tomorrow and continue with this. So I hope this was helpful for you, okay? And I will see everybody later. Ciao.